Hello, everybody. I'm Toby Schifsky, and we are here for the Dearborn webinar for September. And this is an exciting one. This is going to be starting a real estate school, time and investment. In other words, the idea is how do we get a realistic expectation of how much time and how much money does it actually take to start a real estate school? And I think we're going to have a little bit of time to really kind of work on this and go through some of the numbers and talk about some of the generalities. Of course, every state is going to be different, but we have some helpers on here today. I've got Chris Robinson is our national account director in sales, and he is on. He's going to help answer some of you guys' questions. So please, in the chat, look at this. We got everybody saying, "Hey, everybody!" Look at Tammy saying hello. If you would, grab your chat and throw where you're coming from in the chat. Would love to see that. So I'm going to put mine in there. Minnesota. There we go. Look at it. I'm coming from. Oh, wait a second. I got to do one more thing here. I just now I'm doing it. Oh, yeah, I'm coming from St. Paul, Minnesota. Elizabeth, Houston, Texas. Tammy, Western Montana. Look at that, Western Montana. I love it. Let me see here. I am going to uh, there. There we go. So now we're all set. Sorry. So here we go. We got the Dearborn webinar. Everybody's saying hello. And I got a couple really simple questions kind of to start this whole thing off because I really want to know who's here. And just for a little bit of housekeeping for you all, we're going to take about 35, maybe 40 minutes on this webinar. If at any time you get a drop, we do send out the video later, but you might want to participate. You can ask questions. Like I said, I'll be here answering questions. Chris Robinson will be helping. Also, I'm going to ask some poll questions. In fact, I'm going to ask a poll question right now for everybody to kind of understand who's here so I can kind of gear the conversation towards it. And this is a pretty straightforward poll question. So I'm going to launch it. And I always share the poll questions. You should know that. So do you currently have a real estate school? Are you currently operating, running a real estate school? And the answer is yes, no, or gosh, you know what? I'm here because I want to start one. I'd love to see it. I'll share the polls with everybody. So do you currently have a real estate school? I'm going to go ahead and give a couple seconds for people to go ahead and answer. And I always share the polls and a little bit more in the housekeeping. When you enter a text chat, everybody sees your name. When you do the polls, they are anonymous. So just know that nobody else sees your name. All right. If you're on your phone, you might have to slide from one side to the other on your phone to be able to answer the poll question. But I think we've got everybody who's going to play along, has played along in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So I end the poll and I'll share the results with you. There you go. Look at that. 58% already have a school. And you are here to starting a real estate school, time and investment. I love that. Good for you. You got out of the gate, and now we're gonna figure some things out. So that's okay. Nope. I'm just here to learn. I think about 17% of you and 25% of you say, "Gosh, you know what? I'm here to start a new school." That's fantastic. We're going to be able to help you out. Okay. So let's go. I'll stop sharing. And I'm going to go ahead and I am also going to move on to the next slide. So let's do this. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. Starting a company, step by step. So here's what we got to understand. When you're going to go ahead and start a real estate school, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to start a company. So let's talk about starting a company, and we're going to go through a step-by-step guide, and we're going to look at some of the costs involved. And once again, this is like from idea to legal recognition. Some of you have already done this, some of you have started the process, and some of you are looking at this saying, what do I really need to do? I mean, I just maybe I just want to start a real estate school. Why do I have to do all this other stuff? Well, every single person who will help you get into the real estate industry will tell you, first off, you got to know who you are that's getting into the industry. And sometimes this is fun. Sometimes you get to, play along and you get to kind of choose your structure, you get to choose your name, you get a lot of people spend a lot of time organizing a logo and here's how I'm gonna but for this purposes, we're just gonna really kind of talk about the brass tacks, the hardcore, like here's what you got to do. We get a lot of questions from people looking to start. Like a lot of people maybe have been associated with a school, they've been an instructor at a school, they want to go start their own school, or people have been in real estate or brokerage and they want to start, and they're like, I don't even know where to start. This is really the best place to start is understand that you're going to need an entity to do the business, right? And just like you start any business, you want to go into gardening or landscaping, or you want to be in the tax business, you want to do any of that in your state, you're going to have to kind of make sure you go into business properly. And so really, the first thing you got to do is choose your structure. You got to decide on if it's an LLC, if it's a corporation, a C corp, an S corp, and there's big tax differences. I'm not going to jump into the tax differences here, but the simplest one is a sole proprietorship. It's just you, it's your name. Off you go. Partnerships, nonprofit. You know what? If you're going to do more than an LLC or an S corp, you're going to need if you're going to need that. If you're going to do that, you're probably going to need some legal advice. So we're going to talk about some of the costs involved in going through this. And just understand that we're going to talk about, hey, here's the simple DIY, simple, but when you start to get a little more sophisticated and you're doing it for different reasons, the understand that your costs do go up. And like rightly so, if you're that sophisticated, you probably have the wherewithal to manage those costs. And so uh, LLCs are the most common for simplicity and liability protection, just so you know. So if you're looking for a structure, once again, I'm not an attorney, right? Dearborn's not an attorney. We're not advising. This is for educational purposes, but I can tell you, most of the people we see are forming LLCs because it's pretty simple. And for a lot of it, you can do it on your own, which is kind of interesting. So next, you got to choose your state. What's your home state? Register in your home state or state of primary operation. So you might live in Florida, but you're going to do your education in New York. Well, you got to file in New York. Generally, is how this goes. So whatever your primary state is what you're doing. Now you can have your primary state, and then how about this? They call it foreign qualify if operating in multiple states. So you essentially have to, if you're going to operate in another state as an entity, you do need to file as an entity in that other state. They call it foreign qualify because they want to make sure you pay taxes properly, all the accountability stuff. And it really is like doing the same process you did in your state. You're doing the same thing in another state. You get good at it after a while if you really have an idea that the whole United States is like the board game Risk, and you want to take it all over. Just know that you're going to have to make sure all those regulators know you're in business and doing business in those states. Okay, you got to name your business, right? And so the quick steps. You got to name your business. How cool is that? I mean, I'm thinking about everybody who went through this. If you already have a school, you named your business, and that's one of the funnest parts. You can dream big, you can dream little, you can spend a lot of time on logos and blah blah blah. Spend a little time. Get a check name availability, right? Check with the Secretary of State in your state that you're going to file this. You got to check with them and make sure that you're going to be okay, right? You can also try to protect. You get the greatest name in the world. I am Waterfall Education. Or that's pretty silly sounding, but you pick your name. You might want to check to see. You might come up with something clever that you think you might be able to trademark, and you're going to secure it so nobody can impede and try to influence your customers to come to them if you have a trademark on your brand, right? For brand protection. And those things all cost a little bit of money. The trademarking does, and the process takes a little bit of time. We're not going to go into the trademarking today, but checking name and availability with the Secretary of your state. Trademarking is optional, and then DBA filing if using a trade name. So if you're using a trade name and you want to, like I can tell you this. How about this for some interesting piece? Kaplan Real Estate Education, our owner, Kaplan Real Estate Education, does business under a DBA. It's DF Institute. Dearborn Financial Institute is the company name. And so DF Institute, and we DBA as Kaplan Real Estate Education. You can do the same thing. You can have your corporation name and you can do a DBA. You just need to, that's doing business as, you just need to file it properly with the state that you're doing the business in. All right. Appoint a registered agent. So required for LLCs and corporations, right? Now, if you're a sole proprietor, you're already the appointed agent. A sole proprietor, it's just you. It's your social security number for tax numbers and all that kind of stuff. But when you create an entity like an LLC or corporation, you have to have an appointed registered agent, right? And that's the one who receives the legal and official mail. And generally, it's you because you're starting the school and you're doing the stuff. But you could have an officer, that's it. You could appoint somebody. And if depending on your level of sophistication, because we're going to talk about how the costs can be relatively low or the costs can be relatively high, depending on how sophisticated you want to go. Okay. Here we go. File formation docs, right? LLCs are articles of organization. You have to file those. You have to create them too. We're going to talk about that in a second. But corporation files articles of incorporation. So there's articles of organization for LLC, articles of incorporation for corporations, and submit online and pay a state fee. Fees vary. They're not that great. It can be as little as $50. It can be as much as like $300 to file a state formation docs. It might cost you more to create the docs unless you're a clever person and you can do the docs on your own. There are a lot of examples online. There are a lot of examples, probably already with things you've done in the past. So depending on how much you want to spend and how much time you have, it can be very complicated. It can be very simple. Internal documents, you got to have your operating agreement in place if you're an LLC. And if you're a corporation, you got to have your bylaws, board resolutions, stock plan. Once again, if you're a sole proprietor, nobody really cares. You do your own thing. All right. Get an EIN, Federal Employer Identification Number, right? That's your Fed number. You apply online for free at the irs.gov. Pretty straightforward. Go in, it's free. Doesn't cost any money, and it's immediately issued for you on the spot. So it's relatively simple process and relatively pain-free when it comes to money. But generally, anybody who does business with you is going to want to see your EIN, and they're going to want to verify that you're for real an entity. I know that at Dearborn, we require some sort of a federal identification to make sure you're a real entity or you're a real person if you're going to do business with us in a capacity as a school, somebody that we're going to share our intellectual property with and trust you to do business with us. Seems right. So you got to have that. And then optional, this is really just for those who are fairly sophisticated. If you want to go and do an S Corp, once again, please, always check with your tax accountant. Don't mess around. Unless you really are one of those very, very few, very sophisticated people, and it's not a big deal, you know what it is then. File your IRS form 2553, official form that says I'm going S Corp. And the deadline is 2 months and 15 days after start of tax year. Remember, some businesses you can pick what's your tax, your fiscal year. So understand how that plays out with an S Corp. And then register for taxes and permits. So state tax accounts, withholding, unemployment, sales tax. If you're going to have employees right off the bat, you got to have to understand that you have to register for those state tax accounts. And now that you have your EIN and you got your name and you got all that stuff filed, you can then apply for these things. Local business license, if the industry permits, this is where your school and course approvals come in. So if nearly every state I know of in the country requires that your school gets approved, and it could be schools, instructors, and courses, all three, which is pretty much what most of them do. But at a minimum, your school has to get approved. So, and that's in just about every state. We're going to cover what it takes to get through that school approval in a little while. All right. Open your bank account, use formation docs plus EIN, your employer identification number. and keep finances separate from personal accounts. So set up a bank account for your business. Everybody's going to want that. And people you do business with within a business, they're going to want to see that. So make sure you have a separate bank account set up. You set up your payroll if you're going to have staff. Obviously, workers' comp, da 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 da. They can be kind of complicated, but it doesn't have to be. It can be very simple when you're small. Operational setup, you got to understand what your accounting system is, how you're going to track money in and out. Insurance. One of the things here is when you're setting up your business, one of the things you might want to ask is, well, what about liability insurance? Because of the type of business you're going into, starting a school, you got to understand that you're responsible for what you say. In some instances, there can be some ramifications, or if you have a group of instructors who teach for you, you have to be careful about the liability of what people say and do. And so we highly recommend that you talk to an expert for what liability insurance can cover you for, especially as an educator. Uh, Contracts, right? You got to understand how your contracts, your intellectual property templates, if you're going to create your own content, those kind of things. You got to have your ducks in a row. But essentially, if you're if you're going to be a simple educator, the accounting system is pretty easy. You can use anything from QuickBooks to whatever. Insurance is relatively simple. Any professional will be able to help you get what you need, and then plan for compliance and growth. In this industry, in the education industry, there's especially in the real estate industry with licensing and continuing education, there's a pretty large compliance component here for regulatory filing, reporting, and those kind of things. So understand how you got to plan for that, and then growth of your business. All right. What's the cost involved? I can tell you this scenario, right? Scenario number one, low cost DIY. This is do it yourself LLC. You're going to spend $100 to $200 in most states for a filing fee. You're going to spend $100 for a registered agent. You're going to spend anywhere from $50 to $150 for license and permits just for your entity, right? The business entity. This is not including the school. Your EIN is free, right? That's a federal website. You go to sign up. You get it almost instantly. And minimal legal template costs, meaning you set up your documents, your LLC documents, and that there really are some good resources out there. And if you do it yourself, which is not beyond most people who looking to start a school, you can actually do it for nothing. It's your time, it's your effort. So total cost for the DIY, how to start a business is $250 to $500 startup with $100 to $300 a year of ongoing expenses. That's typically what we see in the industry at this point. Now, you can go full scale. For those of you who are like, you know what, I'm a limo. I like nice things, and I want a full polished start. I'm going hitting the ground running. I'm going to have a full, trailer of people to help me build this school. Legal help, accounting setup, more permits, may include multi-state registrations. Right off the bat, you're going in, high insurance and compliance costs. I mean, you can spend $1,000. You have somebody drop your LLC documents, or you have to talk to your tax accountant to say, gosh, should I do S corp or not? It's going to cost you money. You're looking at $1,000 to $5,000 to start up an entity. In the grand scheme of things, probably not bad. $5,000 and somebody else does all the work. If that's you, go for it. But you can be, if we went back a slide, your low cost, $250 to $500, full scenario, polished, $1,000 to $5,000. And so I think that's kind of gives you a kind of a rough general accounting of kind of where we're at when we're looking at the kind of costs involved. If I was to talk about the time required in this, how long does it take? Like, man, am I talking 6 months? Am I talking a year to set up a business? What are we really talking? And if I'm doing that, I'm looking at 2 to 6 weeks. depending on the state, depending on how reactive the attorney general is for the state, the processes that you have to go through in getting your insurance covered, those kind of things. It's really just 2 to 6 weeks. It's pretty fast. And I can tell you this, when people come to Dearborn to start a school, they generally are looking at starting from ground zero. And so one of the things we like to do is let you know that, hey, you know what, go get your entity in place first, get everything set so you're ready to move to that next level of actually then starting a school. And so here's what we have. Costs are anywhere from 250 to 500 DIY. It can be 1,000 to 5,000 if you hire people to do it for you. You're going full limousine on it, which is great if you can afford it. And the estimated time is 2 to 6 weeks is what it's going to take for you to set up your entity, depending on your state. All right. So you guys, by all means, if you have any questions, throw them into the chat and we can start answering. I got Chris Robinson here to answer questions, and he will be available through the whole webinar. I can answer questions too. And if you have any specifics, let us know. All right. Starting a real estate education school. It's kind of a step-by-step overview. As you can understand, we have literally hundreds of people that come to us looking to start a real estate school. And a lot of them start the process, and some of them make it all the way through because there's a couple steps involved. And depending on your state, it can be highly complicated or it can be very simple. And so what we're going to give you here is an overview of what those steps are. And then you can, and depending on the state, it may be more complicated or it may be simple. And then we're going to talk about what are the costs involved? And then we're going to talk about time. How long does it take? Like realistic expectation. Like, should I quit my day job today and I start a school and I'll be in business next week? I can tell you, no, don't do that. It takes a little more time than that to go through the approval processes. But we're going to talk about it right here. By all means, ask your questions and we'll go ahead and hit those questions. All right. So here's our step-by-step overview. Oop, hang on a second. I think here we go. Starting a real estate education school, step-by-step overview. Let's jump in. First, you got to do your business formation and legal setup, right? Just talked about it in a video, and you choose your entity, either an LLC corp, or a company, or a corporation, or sole proprietor. But generally, in order to start a school, you have to have a business formation. You have to get an employer identification number if you're an LLC or corp. If you're a sole proprietor, you know what, you use your social security number, but we highly advise you to talk to a specialist, an attorney, somebody who can give you tax advice if it's about how you want to pay your taxes or not. But generally, most people we see are doing an LLC or they're doing a simple corporation, one or the other. And then secure liability insurance. I think we understand that you can be liable for what you say and what you do in this business, especially if you are, once again, understand that your role as an educator is you educate. And the same thing that this webinar is, this is for educational purposes. Once again, not a tax attorney, not an attorney, can't give you legal advice or tax advice, but this is for educational purposes. So the next one on this list is ensure name complies with state rules. So business formation, make sure your business is set up properly in order to start a school. The next is you got to really understand your state requirements. Check the real estate commission website, your commerce division that regulates the education. Believe me, there is somebody in your state, no matter where you're at, that regulates your education business. And you got to know. And in fact, in some states, we have 2 regulators that regulate the business. And sometimes it's based on if you're doing licensing education or if you're doing continuing education, there could be 2 different entities that regulate those. So you have to really kind of understand, check your real estate commission website or your real estate regulator website. I can tell you this too. ChatGPT or any of the GPTs, Gemini, Claude, whatever, they do a pretty nice job of organizing some of that information, at least get you started on what you're looking at. But we're going to go through kind of what some basic checklist is as we go through this. So you review school licensing and education requirements. So you should, you want to start a school, you should have a really good understanding of what does it take to get the school license and get your education requirements. Do I need instructors? Do I have to qualify as an instructor? What do my courses have to do? How do they have to be delivered? I want to do in-person. I want to do distance education. You should have a general understanding of that. Now, of course, we have some expertise at Dearborn and can help you with some of those questions and details to help you figure it out, but you should have a general understanding of what it is you're looking to deliver. And then identify the curriculum, right? And instructor and facilities and standards. And we're going to talk about, starting a school. There's lots of things involved, but generally you need curriculum, you need content, you need books, you need online courses. And you're either building them or you're licensing them, or you're going into a client relationship with somebody like us, like Dearborn. That's what we do. We make the lift of curriculum, which you'll see as we go through some of the costs in a bit, can be the largest part of the costs of starting a school, for time and money and effort, especially if you're doing licensing education. And so one of the things that we do is we shorten that time frame because our content is immediately available to you, and we shorten the cost. There isn't a 10, 20, 30, $50,000 sunk cost into the content when you have a partner like Dearborn. So make sure you understand your state requirements. Develop the education program. Here we go. Build a curriculum based on state requirements. The good news is with a partner like Dearborn, we have that. Some sophisticated people say, gosh, I want to take it on. I want to do it. I want to build it. I want to try to get it approved. And I can tell you it's a long and trying process to do that. But some people do. Otherwise, like I said, we provide a lot of this information. We'll talk about what that means a little bit later. Choose your delivery method. Gosh, I want to do classroom in person, or I want to do online. And maybe I want to do live online. What does that mean? What does that entail? You kind of have to have an idea of where you want to go and what you want to do, because it does make a difference when you're applying for approvals for your courses, because you're generally going to have to get your school approved, and then you're going to have to get your courses approved. And so the good news is, once again, with Dearborn, we have generally gotten courses approved previously. The content has already been through the rigorous program, and we even have some instructor resources with our books that provide timing outlines and all those kind of things. So understand what it is you want to deliver. Once again, what I can say is this is where we can really help you in the process. This is what we do. This is how we earn our living, is providing this for education companies and schools all across America. And we do it pretty well. We do it every day. So for you, if you're going to need to, think about instructors. For a lot of you're going to be the instructor. That's fantastic, right? You know what you cost. People always ask me, what do people pay instructors, in the industry? And I can tell you it varies. It varies by state. It's very wide ranging, and it goes anywhere from like $20 an hour to 65, 70. I hear some that are getting $100 an hour for very high-end specific education, and more power to you if you're getting that. But it ranges greatly and widely. And not everybody teaches for the money. It's one of the things I used to say to instructors is, man, if you're just here for the money, you should probably do something else. And so what do you love to do, and why is this important to you, is generally a big question I ask instructors all the time. Because if it's just about money, it generally doesn't work long. It works a little, and then it doesn't work because it's generally not enough money. Submit instructor applications and resumes, meet licensing or credentialing requirements. So you have to think about this is a part of understanding your state's requirements. In some states, some instructors, in order to be approved, have to have 5 years of work experience or licensed experience in order to be an instructor. Some states, they have to have a degree in order to be an instructor. So you need to know in your state, what does it take to be an instructor? You should know that before you go hiring anybody or asking anybody to be, an instructor. But you should have an understanding of who's going to be be that person responsible for interacting with students. Because even if you do online asynchronous education only, you have to understand that most states are still going to expect you to communicate with those students when they have questions. So somebody's got to answer the questions that students might have. So when you apply for a school license and and try to get approval to get your school in, right? You submit an application, right, to the real estate commission or to the insurance commerce board or the commerce department or whatever regulator official oversees your state for real estate licensing or continuing education. Could be two different entities. uh, Once again, we can help you with some of that information, but you have to make sure that you're applying to the right place. You provide business details, course outlines, instructor bios. If you have an instructor, they want to make sure they qualify. Course outlines. Once again, they want to know how you're teaching it, if it's an online course or if it's in person. And then your business details. Here's the other thing. These regulators are really, if you want to just put it in your head, the regulators are really about making sure that they're protecting their state's uh, uh, um, their state population, right? They're protecting the consumers in their state who come to take their education from you. They want to make sure that you're legitimate, right? You've done the work, you've got the right instructors, you've got the right courses, you got courses that are approvable, that are fitting the requirements, and even the business details. Sometimes we have states that we do business in. If you're in the state of Massachusetts, get ready. They're going to want to see your financial statements. Yeah, yeah. So they come right in and say, "Oh, we want to see your finances. We want to make sure you're solvent, that you're not going to take a bunch of money from people and then disappear." So you have to be legit, has to be up and up, and you have to have your ducks in a row. So you pay the fees if required, and some states even ask to say post a surety bond. Once again, they got to protect the consumer. They don't want you taking a bunch of people's money and then skating. So some of them will have you post a surety bond, which is not a lot very expensive, but it's another step that you got to do in the process of starting a school. And uh, and really, it's just good business. It's not extremely difficult or complicated. There's just steps, and that's why we talked about setting up a business entity. A lot of this is covered in there, and now this next part is what we're doing right now is just for getting your school and courses approved. All right. Set up your admin and student systems. So I'm going to run a school. You need student registration and transcript system. Like how are you gonna take their registrations? You call in. Well, that's a lot of manual. That's a lot of, you can do that. Some people do. You can have a website with a cart and you can sell courses there. I know that we have at Dearborn, we have our RE Campus online platform, which handles the enrollment, handles the cart, takes the money, right? Enrolls the student in an online course, and then the student comes back to the same place to take that course. Very simple, straightforward online education platform form that's called RE Campus. But you have to have some way to take the student registration and have to be able to understand a transcript system. So a lot of states will require that you have a completion certificate for the students, and a transcript of all the courses that they've taken and when they've completed them. So make sure you have a system for managing that. And I know some people that do that on an Excel spreadsheet. They do. It's very, very cumbersome, very tedious, but that's what they do in their downtime. Or you can be as sophisticated as having a platform like what we use, and it's all there and it's ready for you. So you have to have your policies, refunds, attendance. Some states require you to make sure you have your policies in place as you apply for approval. Like, okay, what do you do if a student wants their money back? What's your refund policy? Some states, like Colorado for one, has an actual policy for real estate schools. You have to follow their refund policy, which identifies like how long somebody can actually ask for a refund and what percentage of the cost of the course do they get back, depending on how long it's been since they started. All those kind of things. So you do need to understand that in your state. And those are pretty straightforward, and the regulars make that very prevalent for you to understand. Secure student record storage. So once again, the regulator wants to protect the consumer, so you have to have some place where you can store your records, right? Download all your enrollments for the year, the names, have people to identify what they completed, and you got to be able to store that, right? So have a here's my hard drive or my disk that has everything from 2023. Here's my disk from 2024. Here's my disk from. You got to have a filing system. So make sure you have that. Once again, our platform, RE Campus for online education, makes that really pretty simple because it has a lot of these features already built in. All right. Marketing and enrollment. So here's the thing. And we're going to talk a little bit about this in a little bit when we talk about the costs, but we have a lot of people who are really, really interested in being an educator because they're an instructor. And they do all the work and set up the school and get all the courses approved and their instructors approved. And and they're a month into this or a month and a half into this, and they are 2 months into it, and they're like ready to launch, and they go, okay, I'm gonna turn on my website, and people are just gonna flock in. Uh, and what happens is you turn it on and nobody shows up, right? They didn't know you were throwing a party. You never sent out the invites. How are you going to invite people, right? And so I can tell you this: marketing and enrollment are a big part of the success of schools, right? Most states, once you become approved, you get listed on their approved school directory. And I can tell you, an awful lot of traffic comes from the state regulator's website. When people go to say, well, who should I take for real estate licensing? They go in there and look. And if you're listed on there, there's a chance they're going to click on your link. They're going to pull it down. Now, not all states do it the same, but a lot of the states have a directory. Here's who's approved. So you got to be thinking about this as you set up your name and you set up who you are in the industry. How are you going to make sure people know you're throwing a party? Where are your invites going out to? And so, and this getting on the state's directory of approved schools is free. It doesn't cost you anything, right? Well, other than you've applied for your school to be approved. That takes a little bit of money, but that's there. You've done the work. Make sure that gets put on and make sure the links work. Check it every month. I mean, I've seen it once before where we had a link go down from one state, and it was a big state and a lot of money. It was $30,000 a month missing, and it was what was going. And it was that little link from the regulator's website. So make sure you understand. You're going to start a school. You got to spend some time on how you're going to market it, right? Launch your website with schedules and pricing. Make sure it's easy to read, clear, concise. One of the things we have with RE Campus, the Dearborn product platform for online courses, is it does have an e-commerce site. It already has a website that you can drive your people to, and the courses are clearly identified, and they can get descriptions, and they can purchase, and all that kind of stuff. So if at any time you're interested in RE Campus or Dearborn, go ahead and reach out to Chris Robinson or sales ops at dearborn.com. We'll give those addresses a little bit later. As a matter of fact, I have some PDFs of all this information, kind of a checklist for these items, and a cost breakdown for these items that we can email to you if you want. At the end, we're going to ask you a poll question, and if you answer the poll question, you can get this information. And just make sure there's one more thing to this marketing and enrollment. You're going to want to make sure you follow the advertising and compliance rules. You can get in trouble. And you can get somebody else in trouble, right? Like some states have rules about how you market and advertise your education. Some states require you have the course approval number. The state, when your course gets approved at a state, you have to have that gets an approval number. Some states, like Texas, requires you to have an approval number in all your marketing whenever you market a course. So you have to understand some of those little rules too. And the good news is the regulator will happily tell you what those rules are. So, but just make sure you realize that you don't want to mess around with your marketing. You want to be on the up and up, because you don't want to be at the end of an investigation and you're just trying to do a business. All right. Ongoing compliance renewal. So yes, most of the time you have to renew your school license. It can be annually, 1, 2, 3, 4, or indefinitely. I've seen some that go like indefinitely. So, but depending on your state, you will renew it. Generally, there's a little cost involved It's not great. It's not as much as your initial one, and generally it's kind of a rubber stamp. Uh, but maintain instructor approvals, make sure you got the right instructors, submit completion reports. Some states require that students have to report their own completions, which is why you want to have their certificates available to them at the end of class. RE Campus does provide those certificates if you have the right level of service. I think it's at the premium or elite level of service for our platform. You get automated completion certificates. And in other states, you have to report it as the educator. So you got to understand what that means. And it's as simple as going to it can be as simple as going to the regulator's website and putting in the names of the people who've completed the courses and what course. And it's pretty simple. You can even do, some states allow bulk uploading if you're doing big classes, but understand how you have to submit those. And then finally, update curriculum with law and regulation changes. If you're doing your own curriculum, you got to stay on top of that. If your course falls out of compliance, the regulator can shut you down. So one of the good news is with a partner like Dearborn, we are always updating the content and always staying side by side, arm in arm with the regulator to make sure that our courses and education are compliant. All right. What are the costs? So we've gone through all the kind of steps. What are the costs for starting a real estate school? You should understand it kind of breaks down to some key drivers. And the key drivers are really online versus personal delivery, or in-person delivery, I mean. So if you're doing online education, I can tell you, and that's like asynchronous online delivery courses, costs are relatively low for starting a school. If you're doing in person, you've got kind of a layer of complexity that can ratchet up really fast. And the complexity can be as simple as you got to hire instructors that can operate in a live environment. You've got to secure a facility for an in-person delivery environment. Maybe you have to get into an annual lease for a facility, and then the costs go up more, right? As opposed to, oh, I'm just going to pay on an as-used basis. And so you have to determine kind of what cost drivers are going to affect your startup costs. State regulatory requirements, once again, those are the key cost drivers. It's a hard cost. I think there's always a cost for state regulatory requirements, but they can be as little as, $200 to $5,000. I mean, they can do that kind of a range. And some of them, like state of Colorado, requires that you actually go in front of a board if you're doing licensing education, and you have to, tell them why do you think you should have a real estate school. That's the most complicated one I know of. Otherwise, pretty straightforward. And you apply, you pay a fee, and off you go. State regulatory requirements, the curriculum material quality. If you're going to build your own, understand, I'm going to build a continuing education course, and it's going to take my time and effort, and maybe $1,000 or something, or $2,000. But if you're going to do that over and over, and you got to develop 10, 12, 14 courses, and you need 6 this, and you need an annual on that. It's one of the things we do. We provide online courses for that. We provide books for live education. If you want to do live online or in person, we have courses, CE courses, licensing courses, already been approved, already been used. You are in a good shape if you, once again, your choice. But it all depends on your level of complexity. Scale and course breadth. In other words, are you going to do one state? You're going to do multiple state. Marketing intensity. How much money are you going to spend? You got to send out those invites. People got to know you're throwing a party. How are you going to do that? There's really clever ways to do it where you don't have to spend a lot of money. You're probably be relying on relationships or making sure you've got the right links to the right websites that people are already going to when they're thinking about getting into real estate, if you're going to do licensing education. And then instructor experience and pay, it all kind of varies on ratcheting up and down. So what are we looking at? Well, state licensing approval fees, on average, about $500 to $5,000. Once again, I talked about Colorado, that's $5,000, pretty much, to get approved for licensing education. But it can be as little as $500 to get your state approvals through for your school to do licensing and CE, depending on whatever state you're in. Curriculum development, 5,000 to 50,000 bucks is what you can end up spending for full suites, or $0 with Dearborn, and you just pay as you go. You pay on an as-used basis, on a per book basis, on a per course basis, so you don't have to come up with the capital up front. Technology, learning management system, and LMS, where are the courses going to be delivered? If they're online courses, if they're student records and retentions and e-commerce platforms, right? So you look at this, and an LMS, in order to buy one, build one, you're like 1,200 to 20,000 bucks if you want. Or once again, with RE Campus, we're at about $450 initial setup fee, and it's $100 a month for our essential level service. You can do a premium service or elite service, which has more help, more service, and more functionality for 150 and 250 a month. But you can be in for $100 a month and in business doing licensing and continuing education a month. Instructor salaries, I said before, $20, $30 to 100, 150. I would put a wide range on here for you, depending on where you're at. Facilities in person, it can be anywhere from 500 to 5,000 a month. I mean, I have facilities that we ended up leaving during the pandemic it was $20,000 a month. So you can spend a lot, or you can spend a little, or you can find a partner who maybe wants to house you too for your in-person education. Finding those partnerships sometimes really does help a lot. So 500 to 5,000. Facilities. So office and admin support. I mean, for most people, it's you. They're doing their own, or you hire somebody. If you're going to go full limo service, like I said, you can spend $2,000 to $10,000 a month for office and admin support. So here we go. Marketing and branding. I would suggest that everybody has some money set aside for marketing, for understanding how they're going to, even if marketing is you're taking a local broker out to lunch to talk to them about the fact that you want them to send their recruits to you for licensing school, for licensing education, and they want their agents for CE and whatever you want. You should have some money set aside for marketing. I see a lot of people who start and they don't have anything in the kitty for getting the message out. Got to send the invites out. Legal insurance compliance, legal advice, right? If you're going to set up a complicated business, you need advice. Make sure you get an attorney. Working capital buffer, that varies. I mean, how much money do you need if it's you? How much money do you need if you have employees? You're going to have to calculate that. Then ongoing renewals and updates. So on a yearly basis, you're probably anywhere from 300 to 500 for your business renewals and real estate stuff. And yep, you do need to renew courses, and you might need to renew your school license every couple of years. So there are some costs involved also, but 300 to 500 a year, depending on what state you're in. All right. So what are the estimated total costs for starting a real estate school? Simplest format to start a school. You're starting it, you did your paperwork on your own, your LLC, you're doing an online delivery of education through RE Campus and Dearborn. Your startup cost is anywhere from $2,500 to $7,500. That's what it costs to start a school. And we're going to talk about how much time it takes in a second. Medium complexity includes staff, live online, in-person education, right? You got to get instructors, you got to secure locations. You're talking at least $7,500 to $20,000, unless you have some of those things already in place. You can ratchet it back a little bit, right? And then finally, the highly complex, like you're going to go live online and in-person education, and you're going to do your own curriculum development, and you're going to get your own LMS, and you're going to do all these things. You're looking at $30,000 to $50,000 kind of minimum to get started and to get in. And that's with licensing education and some CE, continuing education. So understanding kind of where you fit in this format, I think, is important for anybody starting out. And in fact, I've seen some people spend $150,000 to start a school effort. Unfortunately, they were out of business in 2.5 years because once again, they spent their money in places other than probably sending out invitations. So it was a hard pill for them to swallow. But It's one of the reasons why we like to make sure that people understand what the time frame is involved and what the costs are involved for starting a school. It's a fantastic profession. It's a fantastic way to give value to an industry that I think we all care about and love. And so starting a school can be super rewarding in so many different ways. Um, Estimated time to start a real estate school. How does that work? 2 to 6 months. That's everything from getting your business entity to getting your school and instructor and courses approved. And it can take 2 to 6 months depending on the state. We have some states, like California, take a little while to get the courses approved. It has been, it's taken a while. Short staffed, whatever it is, it takes a while to get courses and schools approved in California right now. But generally, it's a little closer. The median, I'm sorry, the average is closer to 2 months than it is 6 months. So we tell everybody you're going to start a school, start early, start now, get your business entity done, and then start your school stuff. And before you know it, 2 months in, and you're looking at some approvals coming back, and you're like, I'm in business. So 2 to 6 months, depending on how complicated really your state approval process is. And so that's really what we're looking at for timing and for money on starting your own school. All right. So we're down to nearly the end of it. And I just wanted to say that we'd like to hear from you. And in fact, I have one more poll question for all of you. And this is the part where you can say if you want to receive a PDF, kind of a checklist of these things, and then a cost breakdown of some of these things. If you want that, go ahead and answer this poll question and we'll get you an email. And so PDF sent to you, would you like us to email you a PDF of the checklists and costs? Yes, please, or no, thank you. You guys go ahead and answer. I'm going to give a couple seconds. And we got, if we have any more questions, I can answer questions if you'd like. And looks like Chris is already answering questions. There we go. And once again, we have answers. This is what we do. We're Dearborn. Chris Robinson. We have a customer experience team. We've got a sales team. We got a whole team of people that can help answer your questions on what does it really take to start a school? What's the time frame? What's the cost? And I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. I like to feel like we like to help make our partners bigger, faster, smarter, stronger, right out of the chute. So that's who we are at Dearborn. We look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to working with you even more. So I think you got a couple things here. If you want to connect with Dearborn, we're on all of those. We're not hard to find. And then thank you for attending. We appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody.